Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and honors and blessings to the elect of Israel. What does CUBA mean? What does CUBA mean? Alright, that's going to be the topic that we're going to go into today. And this alone is going to prove that the people that originally inhabited that island of Cuba, the people that you call the Taínos, they're Hebrew Israelites, okay? And you people that descend from them, their descendants that live on the island of Cuba, you're Hebrew Israelites as well, okay? And the Taíno, we went into the etymology of that word Taíno, and it means good people, and it's from the Hebrew. All right, it's a Hebrew word, and it means good people. And the original Hebrew would be Tawab Ain. So Tawab Ain is like saying Taíno, and it means good people. The reason why they would call themselves good people is because they're Israelites, okay? The only good people are the Israelites according to the Bible, okay? And you people that live on the island of Cuba, you will be Israelites from the tribe of Manasseh. The way you say Manasseh in the Hebrew is Manasseh, and it means made to forget. And Manasseh, he was one of the sons of Joseph. Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, but Manasseh was the firstborn. Although Ephraim got the principal blessing, the greater blessing, but Manasseh means made to forget. Joseph called him that. Joseph called him Manasseh because the Most High made him to forget his toil in his father's house, all right? Because he got sold into slavery by his brothers, and he ended up in Egypt, all right? But to stay on topic, what does CUBA mean, all right? And, you know, so you people that were calling yourself Taíno, you're Israelites, but also you have Negro slaves that were brought to the island of Cuba. They're Israelites too, okay? So either way it goes, whether you're a Taíno, a so-called Taíno, or you're a so-called Negro that live in Cuba, you're an Israelite, okay? Now we're in the Golden Book Encyclopedia, Book 4, Chalk to Czechoslovakia, and so we're in the C's, okay? And we're just gonna stay on point, all right? Now, this is Cuba, okay? We're gonna read the main parts. Cuba, the island neighbor of the United States, is sometimes called the Sugar Island. The name is a good one, for sugar is Cuba's leading crop. Out of every 10 acres that are farmed on the island, nearly 7 are used for growing sugarcane. So the leading crop in Cuba is sugarcane. And you know, they call it Sugar Island. It's like a nickname, but that's not what Cuba means, okay? We're gonna get the meaning. All right, we're gonna go to the third paragraph, and it says Cuba is the biggest island of the West Indies, and it has many good harbors. It is about the size of Pennsylvania. All right, so it says Cuba is the biggest island of the West Indies. Keep that in mind. It's the biggest island of the West Indies, okay? And something that's big, you think of something big, you think of something that's great, something that's large, all right? So keep that in mind, okay? And the reason why it was so big was because of all the people that lived on that island, okay? All of the Taínos that lived on the island of Cuba, all right? So you would have to keep that in mind as well, okay? And we'll jump down to the bottom. About 1 million people live in Havana, the capital of Cuba. So only about 1 million people live in the capital of Cuba, which is Havana. Okay? So 1 million people live in the capital by itself. All right? So imagine the entire island, which is the biggest island of the West Indies, okay? So that's all we need from here. All right, now, who were the people that lived on the island of Cuba first? The Taíno. Now we're gonna read this. I got this off of Wikipedia.org. The Taíno were an Arawak people who were one of the major indigenous peoples of the Caribbean at the time of European contact in the late 15th century. They were the principal inhabitants of most of Cuba, Jamaica, Hispaniola, presently Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, in the Greater Antilles and the Northern Lesser Antilles and the Bahamas, where they were known as the Lucayans. They spoke the Taino language, one of the Arawakan languages. So the Taino lived on the island of Cuba, all right, as well as these other islands, okay? Jamaica, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, all right? Now, we're gonna jump down to the bottom here. It says, Cuba, the largest island on the Antilles, was originally divided into 29 chiefdoms. Most of the native settlements later became the site of Spanish colonial cities, retaining the original Taino names. For instance, Havana, Batabano, Camigu, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Baracoa, and Bayamo. The name Cuba comes from the Taino language. Remember that. The name Cuba comes from the Taino language. However, the exact meaning of the name is unclear, but it may be translated either as where fertile land is abundant, Cubao, or great place, Coabana. And that's pretty close, all right? Now they said that the exact meaning of the name is unclear, all right? But you know the meanings they gave are pretty close. Where fertile land is abundant, or great place, and really great place, okay? And just like we read, going back to this encyclopedia, Cuba is the biggest island of the West Indies. All right, so that's why it's great. Okay, now from there, we're gonna go to this book here, Christopher Columbus and the Participation of the Jews in the Spanish and Portuguese Discoveries. All right, and we're gonna go to page 98, and it says, we're gonna read the highlighted portion. Roldan's chief arguments in support of his view is the language of the Indians in Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, and the adjoining islands. He contends that it has many resemblances to the Hebrew. So he says that the language of the people in the West Indian islands, which are Hispaniola, Cuba, and Jamaica, and the other islands, he said that they spoke Hebrew. Their language resembles the Hebrew. In fact, he even calls it corrupted Hebrew. He asserts that such names as Cuba and Haiti are Hebrew, and that they were first applied by the earliest caciques, the chiefs or leaders, Cassine, who discovered and peopled the islands. So this man Roldan, which he's a Spanish clergyman, and when you look him up, basically he thought the Indians were Israelites based off of a manuscript he found in Pablo, Seville, Spain. Well, in a library in Pablo, Seville. Okay, so he knew that they were Israelites, and he said that they spoke Hebrew. The Indians, the so-called Indians, the Tainos on the West Indian islands, he said that they spoke Hebrew, a corrupted version of Hebrew. And he said that Cuba, the name Cuba is Hebrew. And that's what we're gonna prove, okay? Now, we read how it's the biggest island of the West Indies. All right, it could possibly mean where fertile land is abundant, Cubao, or great place, Coabana. But we're gonna get the exact meaning, okay? Now, this is off of dictionary.co, ill Hebrew word. It says Cuba. How do you say Cuba in Hebrew? It's Cuba. Cuba. But that's the Yiddish way of saying it. Actually, it's Kwawaba. It's Kwa Wa Ba. Kwa Wa Ba. All right. But you know, when people say Cuba, that's the Spanish way of saying it. So the Spanish way, or how you say it, Espanol, is Cuba, which is close to the Yiddish way of saying it. But actually, in Hebrew, you would say Kwa Wa Ba. Okay. Now we have this off of blueletterbible.org. All right. And it's Cuba. Now, the way you say it in Hebrew, you could say Kwa Wa Ba or Kwa Ba. Kwa Ba. Kwa Ba, which means large vaulted tent or tent. That's what Cuba means. Cuba means large vaulted tent. All right. We say Cuba in English. In Espanol, they say Cuba. But in Hebrew, you would say Kwa Wa Ba or Kwa Ba. And it means large vaulted tent or tent. Okay. But when you read in the scriptures, a tent can represent land. Okay. It can represent land. It can represent a dwelling. All right, where people dwell. Now, I got this off of BibleStudyTools.com. For tent, it says, let's see, we're going to just read the top. It says, this word is used also of a dwelling or habitation. And they give you the different Hebrew words for tent. Now, this is the word that we looked up, which is Kwa Ba or Kwa Wa Ba. And in Yiddish, they have Cuba. All right, that's Yiddish though. All right, when it says a dome-like tent devoted to the impure worship of Baal Peor, and they give you the scripture. All right, but it's a tent. It's a large vaulted tent. You know, and that's the scripture. But basically, that's the point. Is that the island of Cuba, which is the biggest island of the West Indies, the name Cuba is from the Hebrew, and it means large vaulted tent, and it would make sense that it was called that because it's the largest island of the West Indies. You know, it's a large habitation. You had a lot of Israelites that lived on this island. The people that were calling themselves Taino or Tawab Aim, which means good people. A lot of Israelites lived on this island. Okay, that's why it was so big to house all those Israelites. Okay, and so you know that's the point. A tent can also mean a dwelling or habitation, so that means people live there. Okay, and I have a scripture here. This is Isaiah chapter 54, the book of Isaiah chapter 54, verse 2. Enlarge the place of thy tent, and let them stretch forth the curtains of thine habitations. Spare not, lengthen thy cords, and strengthen thy stakes. So a tent can mean your habitation, okay? Somewhere that you live, all right? And this represents land, okay? In the kingdom of heaven, we're going to own the whole earth, all right? And in the land of Israel, that land is going to be bigger. All right, it's going to be clean. The earth is going to be clean. It's going to be renewed. All right. And when you read on, we're going to possess the other nations. They're going to be our slaves. But this is the point. All right, that Cuba, the island of Cuba, is the biggest island of the West Indies. And the name Cuba, to get it again, in the Hebrew, Kwa Wa Ba or Kwa Ba, and it means large vaulted tent. All right, you can say Kwa Wa Ba or Kwa Ba. All right, that's the Hebrew. All right, so I hope this is edifying. Okay, you people that were calling yourselves Tainos, all right, you're Israelites. Okay, and you know you live on the island of Cuba today. All right, you're Israelites. If you of Indian and Negro descent, you're an Israelite, okay? If you're of Indian and Negro descent, all right? So with that, I'm going to say shalom.